Welcome to Positive Talk with Kevin McDonald. Hey, that's me. Hi, and welcome to Positive Talk. Our show features the best positive stories and people from around the globe as we endeavor to answer the universal question of why am I here and what is my purpose? Understanding that can change everything, and knowing your greatness is fundamental to living your best life. So join us right now as together we work to create the adventure of our lifetime. And welcome to the show, everybody. I'm glad that you're here because we are witnessing the adventures of somebody's lifetime. And he's the gentleman that is sitting right over there. His name is Tom Harrison, and he's written really an outstanding book. It's getting great reviews. Came out in February. And so, as often happens in the literary world, he really has no earthly idea how it's doing in a lot of circles because they don't tell them till like 3 or 4 months out.
That's right.
And stuff. But he's written the book From Punishment to Peace, and it's a road trip to forgiveness. And I want to thank you for being here. This book, I believe, is going to mean a tremendous amount to a lot of people. And I want to thank you for coming here and sharing it with us.
Thank you, Kevin. I'm so excited to be with you today. It
is so cool that well, we can set the book up a little bit by saying that it is a true story. Now, is it a biography of sorts?
It is. Well, it's funny. I would say in part it is, but my role or the main, I'm one of the two main characters, but the story is primarily about the other main character. But yes, I play a pretty significant role in it. So yes,
it's interesting that as you move through life and you meet some of the most interesting people, this one happened to be a relative of yours.
Yes.
And the life that he led, which was his homelessness, and he was a street smart, drug addicted or drug dependent man, and had gone through a lot of issues in his life. And I think what I want to really kind of get to and get out here is that your story is unique, but it's kind of in many ways like everybody else's story, in that we all suffer things in our life and we all have experiences that are both good and also tragic, and we deal with them a certain way, and we're trying to avoid talking about them in a lot of ways because they don't serve us, we don't think, and stuff like that. And you writing this book is you're very honest about everything that happens within the book and within your life. And
yes.
Did you feel like you were kind of writing it in your underwear?
Oh, that's a great question. That, you know what, I'm going to use that again. I hope you're not going to copyright those words, because
nope, not a bit.
It's going to come back in one way or the other in more than one conversation. Yes, I would say that is a great analogy, Kevin. It is. I think we all carry something. We all have to carry something, whether when we were 18 years old, a girl said no to us that we just adored and wanted to go out on a date with. And maybe we shouldn't carry those very, very long, but some people do. Or we got cut off in traffic. I mean, I think how we overcome what I'm calling punishments of life is really dependent on how mature we are and how experienced we are in recovering from things that disrupt our lives. And I think during the times of our youth, when we receive probably the most intense punishments, if we receive them, and from the dearest people in our lives, let's say our parents or relatives, those are the hardest ones to shake off, and they end up carrying forward in manifesting in some form or fashion. That's really what the story's about, is two guys that grew up in abuse, and we can describe that if need be. But and as both the main characters became adults, we triangulated into a form of life that we thought was normal, but in reality, we were creating such damage to ourselves and to others. And it wasn't until we got later in life when we look back in life and go, we're not where we're supposed to be here. Yeah, he was addicted. He was homeless. He was in the penal system or through the judicial system 4 dozen times. And then he was my uncle. And as the nephew, the slightly younger nephew, uh, I took my abuse and became not only an achiever, but an overachiever. I had a father who didn't think much of my abilities in my youth. And he let me know about that quite often. And so I became addicted to things like money and materialism and hedonism. And yet, when we got to be kind of later in life, we realized even though we went completely different directions in life, complete 180-degree difference, we were at the same point in our lives. We had holes in our soul. We did not triangulate life in a very positive way that should have we should have felt during much of our life. And so we began these road trips together. We reconnected after 2 decades and began to peel the onion. And that's really what the start of the road from punishment to peace was all about.
Well, you mentioned the girlfriend thing or the dating the girl thing.
Yeah.
And I don't know if this is anybody else's experience, but my experience was I fell deeply in love with my high school sweetheart, and we dated. In those days, I don't know if they do this today, but in those days, we counted it in months. We've been together for 20 months. Isn't that great?
Yes. I
And
get you. Isn't that
and
funny?
and at one point she dumped me. Tom, she dumped me. And that experience for me carried through into every relationship that I had through the rest of my life.
Isn't that amazing? Yeah.
It and it all happened when I was 15 to 17.
Mhm.
And rather than understand it and deal with it, I just assumed that that's just the way it was.
Because
And
you were young and didn't know any better. You had not had life experience, just like the uncle character and the nephew character being physically abused. The uncle John was physically and emotionally abused and was sexually abused, and then the Tommy character was emotionally abused, and from our fathers. And to be able just to take all that and the damage, and then go off into the real world, we don't know how to triangulate that. So I don't know whether you ended up marrying the love of your life after, a few years after the age of 17 when you got dumped, or whether you have gone through 18 different marriages. But that's really the essence of this story, is to say there's got to be a way to shake off those punishments that we receive or do to ourselves in life.
And I really think, and by the way, I haven't had 18 marriages, but every 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 I finally said, ooey with it. I give up. I'm not, I
Sure.
can't figure out how
No,
to
I
make
get
it
it.
work. So I'm not going to do that anymore.
Right.
And but you're right in that your parents, I like to think about my dad when I was born was like 27 years old. He was just a kid himself, didn't know anything. And so when as we grew up and he was immersed in his career, immersed in his job, he wasn't present for us,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
he
Yeah.
didn't care to be.
That's tough.
And
That's tough.
and that is something that we as people take with us, and we carry that with us for the longest time
We
until
do.
we get to a point in our life when we can figure it out. That's
Yep.
what you did.
Yes, absolutely. In fact, just to share, my father was 16 when I was born,
Oh wow.
and looking back, he's been gone for several years. And looking back with clarity, he was bipolar and he was a heavy narcissist. And by the way, he went through 6 marriages,
Oh,
and so and so the point, and he reminded me daily in various different forms that I was not wanted in his life. He never really said those words, but he said enough words to go, you know what, you're in this world. I didn't necessarily want you. I have to deal with you. And you have kept me from having a life that I would have preferred to have had. And what do you do as a son when your father's telling you that, and it's such a young age, and for all of your youth? And so that's tough when you have fathers that aren't really there, or have their own damage that they're trying to heal through venting it towards their son. That's a way of inheriting the damage, and that's what this book is about too. Is saying those that are the punished can end up inheriting enough to be a punisher, and that's what a lot of this story is about, between these two main characters.
I call that the 7 generation cycle.
Yeah, I can see that.
And
That makes
because
sense.
it goes from father to son, who becomes the father to
Mhm.
the son, and it's like, this is what my dad did, this is what I'm going to do, and that's how it is now. In my family's case, my oldest sister, who adored my dad, but my dad never gave her the time of day, never went to the father daughter tea, never in school, and never did those things. It affected her deeply her
No,
entire life.
I can see that. I can understand that completely. And that both of these characters were materially affected, and really treated themselves and treated others in a way that would have been a lot different if their growing up years up till 16, 18 were different. We're more. I don't know what I don't even know what normal is as a kid, other than I remember driving down the street when I was 17 in my car in my 65 Mustang, and I'd see a father and son out there pitching a ball, or he's grilling hamburgers, and I'd just sit there and I'd get emotional. I'd get envious, and with envy comes potentially anger, and that's kind of where what it ended up developing, is that I carried a level of anger from the fact that I felt like I was cheated in life. And so, but anyway, and the story is about how these guys who, like I said, the uncle character had a very tough time struggling through life, where the nephew character, he had everything in life. He overachieved. He traveled everywhere. I'm talking about me, of course, Kevin. Traveled. He, third person, first person. How do I answer these questions from you, Kevin? Um, uh, Traveled great. I had a wonderful career. I've had everything that this world could give me, or I've earned, and yet I went through 2 marriages on my own, and I was not a happy person. And I measured my life around the almighty dollar, and what I made last year wasn't going to be enough this year. I had to beat it, and the next year I had to beat it, and I was tearing myself apart in the process. And so, hopefully, this is called positive talk radio. So I hope that we can eventually get to the positive part of all this conversation, because there is a positive to all this, and I want to make sure that we got that out there.
Oh, I promise that we'll get there. But
I want to make sure we were going there.
what I need, but what I really need, someone out there in our audience, this experience that you outline in the book is exactly the experience that they're having in life.
Hmm.
And I want them to know that there is a way to get to peace, but it's not easy. And sometimes it takes a long time. I wanted to ask you, why do you think it is that it takes us so long to get smart enough to figure out that what happened to us when we were kids doesn't matter anymore, and that we can move past it? Why do you think it takes us so long?
I think there's a couple of answers to that, I believe, Kevin. One is that I think there's a lot of times we're just too busy trying to figure life out.
Yeah.
Where we think that the next job we have will be the job. And then we get into that job and we race hard inside it, and we get paid to have that experience. And we bring home a check, and then we feel like we build a life from that check. And we think that's the right thing, until after enough iterations of doing it, we may wake up and go, that's not the right job, or I've not created this nest, either by myself or with others, that makes sense, that really it feels productive. It feels important to me. It doesn't have to be important to anybody else, but it needs to be important to me. And so I think we go through life trying different iterative directions of life when in search. I think when we get that punishment so early, we start early trying to find the alternative to it, and yet we keep reaching, and maybe we grab it, but don't know that is that peaceful point in life that we've been searching. So I think it's the iterations of life where we're trying so many different things, and we wake up one day and we go, none of that's really worked. And for me, it took a kind of a confluence of 3 or 4 things that happened all at once that woke me up to say, I've got to do something different now, because I have a shorter amount of time in front of me than I have behind me, and I want my own answers to why I ended up like this. And so I can explain that if you'd like, but it took me kind of a, and I'm spiritual, so for me it would be like a God grabbing my shoulders and just shaking me hard with certain things that have happened in my life, and He woke me up, and I go, okay, now what do I do from here?
You know, and I don't know if you listen to the top of the show, the opening I do.
Mhm.
And one of the major things, one of the major themes of that is at one point, and I believe this totally, at one point in our life, all of us say, why am I really here?
Yeah,
I'm not here to make a paycheck,
right.
and what is my purpose? Why did God put me here? What
Mhm.
is the reason that I'm here? And I think everybody does that at one point in time, whether you act on it or not, is an important piece to that, because some people will just say, "Nah, I can't. I'm comfortable. They've got what I call the golden handcuffs to where they make enough
Yep,
money, and they're they're in denial of who they really are, and so they
exactly.
say, I've got to continue doing what I'm doing, because this is all I know and I can make a living. And then
Yep,
at the end of that time, they look back and they go, holy crap, I've wasted my whole life in
no
search
doubt.
of something that doesn't exist.
Hmm. Hmm. And I think and again, unfortunately, there's a famous line in a movie. It says, "The youth is wasted on the wrong people," uh, and,
It's
and
so true.
it's so true. It's a Wonderful Life is the movie it came from, and it really is the fact that when we get that maturity, when we get that knowledge, that it just hits us all at once, or we always had it, but we really get the noise away from us and really can start to focus on it. By the time we really get there, we're in the latter part of a lot of people, excuse me, are a latter part of their lives. And they can go, well, you know what? I'm not going to get married again. I'm not going to have any more kids again. I may have some grandkids, but my kids are in Seattle and not in Atlanta. And so uh, they fall back on I'm just going to coast the rest of my life, of my life. And for others, like myself, I've always wondered, what am I here for? Because I landed in a not so great spot. My parents were 16. I had family members that were loving parents and people, but I had others that were like very difficult in their situations in their lives. And yet I felt a lot of times alone in trying to capture what life is all about and not knowing where I was supposed to go, what I was supposed to do, and how to do it. And so it's only when we get to be later in life where we start to look back and go, well, okay, it worked. I'm still alive. I've got a buck or two in my pocket. I've gone to county fairs, and I've been to New York to see a Broadway play. You can check off the I did this, did this as a way to feel like you have accomplished something. But I think in reality, we get there. I think all of us do. Is what was this all about? And did my life really mean something? And so you go through 2 divorces. You're probably thinking, probably didn't mean as much as you thought it would. It's not what you intended life to be, but it's an example of an awareness of the fact that I didn't do it right. And it was that second divorce, along with just, as I said, kind of God clearing some things out, that sent me, and some wonderful people who have elected to walk alongside me in my path, that really began to open the eyes to go, I've got to get on a journey. I've got to understand this. I want to know what my purpose was. And it wasn't until I went on that journey, Kevin, where I really realized what my purpose was. And it wasn't to make a 7-figure income. It wasn't to own a home or 2 or 3 or 10 or fancy cars or the next big paycheck. Uh, there is a purpose that we all have that I think is beyond just the 4 walls of what we do for a living, and how we think we're living our life. And the best opportunity we could ever have is to take a moment and try to find that. And I've always hoped that it would be that the younger generation can find that early and really enjoy it and just be happy the rest of their lives. And most of us kind of most of us don't even find that. A lot of us don't find it, but some of us has to wait till the end of our lives to find that. So.
And the ones who find it early oftentimes it's a very uplifting thing for me to talk to people like that, but there are so few. There's so few and far between that most of us spend our life thinking about our past and all that stuff and all the gook that we've had, and we don't look to the future necessarily. And by the way, I need to take a quick break, but when we come back, I want to talk about the fact that you made that switch, and I have my own story of how that happened for me, because it's like we could trade skin. You might like it. I might like your skin a little bit better than mine anyway, but we could trade stories because it's very similar. And I think that happens to a lot of us. But I would be really curious to know when you made that discovery of like, good Lord, why am I really here? And what am I here to do rather than what I've been doing? Because what I've been doing ain't working.
Yeah.
It's like a friend, he's 66. He just got married for the 4th time. And I said to him, why don't you just get a dog?
At some point you realize that after 3 times, it's probably not, you don't quite have the metrics down pat as to how to make it work. I get that. Believe me.
That's exactly right. We're talking with Tom Harrison, and he's written the book From Punishment to Peace, Road Trips to Forgiveness. And Tom, it's a great book, and I'm really enjoying this conversation.
Thank you, Kevin.
We're going to take a quick break, and we'll be back in 30 seconds. I promise, folks, just 30 seconds, so hang with us.
They have your eyes. They have your ears. They have your smile. Now all they need is a little more of your time. Make a difference in your child's life, because anyone can be a father. It takes time to be a dad.
And welcome back to Positive Talk with Kevin McDonald on the Brushwood Media Network. And I want to thank Tom Harrison for being here. By the way, I didn't mean to play that, but I guess I did. Because
it's pretty timely.
I know. And I was thinking to myself, your dad was 16 years old when he barely even knew how to make a baby and hadn't done it very long before you were conceived and were born. But he was only 26 when you were 10. Yeah, he was a baby himself. He was hardly out of diapers.
I couldn't have begun to imagine being that young and having a child and that responsibility that attached itself to that 15 minutes of passion, if you want to call it that. And I'm an example of how somehow the grace of people around me and God and whoever that I got beyond it. And but I did have a great family network other than a couple of characters in the family unit. But yeah, I can't imagine, Kevin. I couldn't imagine anyone go through and having a child that young. Just couldn't imagine.
And it makes it really, really hard on the child because they're trying to figure all this out at the same time. They have no idea what it is that they're trying to figure out.
That's exactly right. I agree.
And so when you reach this particular point, and mine was when I was 42, I had the house, had the kid, had the wife, had the dog, had the cats, had a couple of kids and stuff. But I just fundamentally wasn't happy. When you came to that point in yours, what did you decide to do to try and go down the discovery road of finding out who you really were and what you were all about?
Well, I had to do something pretty dramatic, and I guess that's my personality to some degree or another. I usually either go big or go home kind of mentality, and
which is great for business.
Well, and it's great for business, and it served me well. So but there's always times where you're going to trip up and completely get the opposite result. But for me, I had to walk away from everything. I don't say everything like a marriage. My second marriage had ended. And I had to walk away from my career and walk away from any understanding of what my tomorrows would look like. And I had to it's almost like I had to reset and go, what do I do from here? Who am I to be able to do what I need to do going forward? And then, so my business partner and I decided to close our business down. So I didn't have an office to go to. My second marriage failed, so I didn't have a home to go to. And then the third thing happened, which was the most important. Well, there's two other things. The object of my obsession all my life to prove my father wrong, which created this overachievement and this obsession to money, because all I had to do was wave it in his hand in front of him, say, hey, I'm playing at Pebble Beach, and I saw Clint Eastwood and a foursome in front of me. And I kind of was a braggart about that. But the obsession that I had to obtain my father's love suddenly ended when he suddenly passed. And so I didn't have that drive to prove him wrong. And then the fourth thing is and this is really important, I think, to the path towards peace, is that if you're carrying a punishment, if you're carrying anything that is just dragging you or has turned you into something or someone that you don't believe in, you have to put yourself in a position to talk that out, to open that up, to share it with anyone, whether it's a trusted person or a complete stranger. You have to have that kind of trust in yourself, not necessarily the trust of people around you, but more of a trust in yourself to draw those pains out. Because if you keep them silent, you're never going to shake them off. And I was fortunate enough to have two people walk alongside me pretty much at the same time. One is my third and absolute last wife, Diane. I promised that to God, her, the world, everything. And equally important, a gentleman by the name of Larry, who is as part of this book, who I met, ran a ministry in North Atlanta, and he ran a small group environment. And it was funny how we met, but he ended up inviting me to the small group, and I got around a dozen guys. And Kevin, I'm sure you understand this. You get any guy to share about anything to any other guy, and that's like trying to pry, I don't know, a nail that would never want to come out of a board with a hammer. It's very difficult. But you get 12 guys and one starts to open up and share, and you'll be amazed how the other 11 will just start gushing. And they don't need wine or they don't need chocolate to make that happen. This is just a bunch of burly guys saying, giving themselves permission to say, I understand what you're saying. Let me tell you what happened to me when I was 17 or when I was 14, and then that dialogue starts to create other dialogue. And the minute that happens, that's when the healing process, at least it did for me, and I've seen it done with dozens and dozens of men.
Yep.
That's when the healing process starts to occur. And I don't know how you ended up and how you got to a healing place to where you are now, but if I had to guess, it had at least some involvement with you sitting down, whether it be with a counselor, someone that just, you don't know who they are, they don't care other than getting a check from you, except to help you. And or a loved one or family members or a stranger or a group of guys, and just having that opportunity to talk and to talk calmly, and not just for an hour. We're talking about an hour or two a week for months and years, because it takes that long to really open that up and really put the story together in such a way that others are now leaning into it. And let me share with you what we've experienced or I've experienced. And the beauty of this is that once you're starting to receive that favorable response from these other guys, you're training yourself to do the same thing. So you end up exercising your empathy muscle to the point where they've got a separate, you've never had that problem, but they've got a problem. And you go, you know what? Let me tell you what I've heard other men experiencing that before, how they got over that. Or, yeah, you know what? I do remember that happened to me. It didn't bother me that much, but let me tell you why it didn't and why. I mean, and not only why, but I mean, I'm saying why twice, but why it happened, why it didn't bother me, and how that would have affected me if I had felt differently, if I had not experienced certain things in my youth, or had experienced certain things, why that did or didn't bother me as an adult. So having that interaction between guys was a game changer for me. It really was.
Well, I'm convinced, and I believe this to be true, that the universe works to conspire with us to bring people into our lives at the exact time that they need to show up.
Yeah.
And so that when you make that decision, and clearly, I think in your case, it was a decision that it ain't working the way it is now. I need to figure it out, and I need help to figure it out. And that's for you. That's when these two lovely individuals showed up in your life, and they were there because that's when the right time was for you to have them there, and for you to recognize it and to move forward with it. For me, it was another couple. My wife and I, and it was another couple, and we became firm and fast and went down a road of learning about spirituality and meditation and quieting your mind and doing all the things that could be helpful to us. And so for me, that worked. But I believe that the universe will put those people in your place when you're ready to receive them. What do you think?
I agree 100%. There's but at the same time, you also have to be prepared to be the deliverer of that comfort.
True.
And I've got a friend of mine and who is going through a divorce. He's been kind of struggling with it for a couple of years. And I'm an expert. I've always believed you need to go to an expert to kind of get some help. And unfortunately, I guess I'm more of an expert in that topic than I care to be. But it's our time together where I'm seeing him open up as to where his pains are around that, and where we had a very different relationship prior to him wanting to share his troubles with the divorce. And I think that we do have people that come into our lives, but then maybe we are that same person who is meant to go get and be involved with other people and interject into their lives during their troubles.
You are exactly right, because of the experiences that you have can somehow be transferred and really helpful to somebody else who's going through the same kind of thing that you're going through or have gone through in the past as well. By the way, we're talking with Tom Harrison. Go get his book, From Punishment to Peace, Road Trips to Forgiveness. It's a great book. It's a great read. It will mean something terrific to you. I need to take a station break. And when we come back, we're going to delve more into this because, see, I told you, Tom, it was going to get positive at one point.
Yes, you're right, Kevin. I'm so happy about that.
And we'll be right back after this.
Thank you.
You're listening to Brushwood Media Network, the best in syndicated talk, news, and entertainment shows.
Doesn't matter. You can go by.
As you go about your daily life, look closer. As you gather with family and friends who love and support you, look closer. There are youth right in your community who don't have the home, warmth, and healing you have. So look closer. Every year across America, a staggering 4.2 million youth are homeless or trafficked. And for 50 years, Covenant House has worked relentlessly to keep them safe and protected. Tonight, 2,000 young people will sleep safely in a Covenant House bed. And tomorrow, they will wake up surrounded by love. They get clean clothes, hot meals, medical care, and a safe place to sleep. 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. In sites across America to help them fulfill the great promise of their lives. So look closer at Covenant House. To help or get help, go to covenanthouse.org.
And welcome back to Positive Talk with Kevin McDonald. You know, Tom, I got to tell you, I play these things because, number one, Brushwood Media gave them to me, but they really add, I think they add a lot to the show. And as far as things like 4.2 million kids are either homeless or trafficked in this country, that's crazy. So that means that there are 4 million kids that are going to wake up and have the experiences that you and I have had.
No doubt about that. And that means that we need to think about being the counter to that experience at some point for at least one of those 4.2 million, if we can, because I think that's because we were talking about having a purpose in life.
Yes.
My purpose is not making a dollar. My purpose is to maybe taking that dollar and changing somebody's life. And I think that, and that's really what this book that I took 10 years to write. That's really what the journey with my Uncle John and getting reconnected with him was my first step in saying my life can't be about me anymore. It's got to be about someone else and helping someone else get to a better place than they've been through most of their life.
You know, I had a interview with a gentleman by the name of Neil Donald Walsh, who wrote Conversations with God, which is a really great book in my world. And one of the things that God says in that book is that giving happiness to somebody else is how you achieve happiness for yourself.
Yeah.
Have you found that to be true?
100%. I mean, slam dunk, table pounding, however cliche you want to throw at that. It's Final Four time, so I slam dunk that for sure. I don't. I guess it's how we're wired. Is that I think most of us, I'm hoping all of us, really derive some form of happiness, and we do. If we have kids, that's automatic. I mean, we want to make our kids happy. It's my dad and my uncle's John's dad, but there's always exceptions, I guess. But I think most of us are very hardwired to feeling joy when we see we make somebody smile, or I just feel like that's such an important emotion that we don't think a lot about until we trip over it. And then when we trip over, it's like, wow, I didn't know that I was capable of making that person so happy in the moment. And then you hope you can replicate it. And that turns into an addiction, a good addiction. And then it turns into a way of life. And that's where that's where my life is really pushing towards. I don't know if I'll ever get there, because I think that's a reach that's a finish line that I don't think any of us should reach. I think we should all be striving to be available to others in their journeys, because again, some people walk beside me to help me get to my finish line of peace. And so it's my journey to help I hope help others get to that point. And I should never see that finish line of trying as far as life is concerned.
Have you ever thought about doing some public speaking?
I have been very fortunate in my career to have spent many an hour in a boardroom making presentations, or groups of 10 to 20 or 30. There's been a few times, maybe more than 50. And I've always been somewhat nervous about it, because I've always been overconscious about how I come across, until this journey that led to the writing of the book. And I realized that it's not about how other people see me, it's how I see myself, and that I can't make everybody like me. And so, but back to my point, and that is, and to your question, I've been very fortunate to have spent a lot of time in front of people, talking to them in groups, and I've enjoyed doing that. It's been more in a business environment and less so like what we're doing right now. And again, kind of like, wow, did I miss something? Because I think, Kevin, you got one of the coolest jobs in the world, because you get to talk to people that you either want to talk to or don't want to talk to, but you can create conversations with them, and that you're sharing that with hundreds of thousands, millions of people. And that's a cool thing in a big scale, where I'm kind of like, I'll do my onesies and twosies. You're in the millionsies and doing really well with it. So I'm just proud to be here with you, man.
Well, you know what I got to tell you, Tom, is that number one, you're right. I have the coolest job. I am the luckiest man alive.
You do.
I've got to interview upwards of 2,000 awfully great humans,
Good for you.
and I've learned a tremendous amount, and I've been able to take that, build a great interview with it that can then turn around and benefit. And my job is to benefit one person who's listening to you and I talk today.
Yeah.
As far as anybody else, that's up to the universe. I can't control that. But it's important that we provide that forum for people. And I've been extraordinarily blessed and because I've left a legacy, as you have with the book From Punishment to Peace, and I love the title, by the way.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you.
It's a real, that would make me pick up the book and look at the back.
Thank you.
Because but it's important, and it's vital for all of us. And I think that if you were to take your message and go public with it, I think that you could change a lot of people's lives.
Well, you're very kind. These are, I think the story, and telling the story, I want to fit this in if I can. These were two kids growing up where every parent would want to have us as a kid. We were just good kids, and we just grew up in bad environments, and we didn't know any better, and we became adults that didn't know any better. And so I think we all have a little bit of John and Tommy in us, where we haven't figured out how we got where we've gotten, but we needed some help with it. And in these two characters' case, they went to each other and began to spend time. And one starts to talk, and the other starts to talk, and onions are peeled, and then more time is spent, and then healing. You can see the healing that's happening between these two guys, and the forgiveness that's being built around the anger that they both had towards their fathers. And in the end, even though there's some mild tragedy to it, it's an amazing ending, unexpected ending. But let's just say that peace is achievable, and it's right there. We just have to we have to set our sights on it, and there's a path to it. And the book describes that.
And your work with the men of getting 10 or 12 guys together, because you know how we are. It's like you would get 12 guys. Anybody want to say anything? Yeah, I played Pebble Beach and was right behind Clint Eastwood, and I got to go here, and it's $2,200 for a round, and I got, I just paid cash. That's how men roll. But when you are, and you have that gift of being able to open guys up to talk frankly and honestly about the fear that most men have that will never be known because we're scared to talk about it.
Well, thank you for the compliment. And it's taken years to really understand that if I can do it, anybody can do it, meaning we all have the ability to do it. We just have to, it's not as much get permission to do it as much as it is, there's nothing to fear from it. The world will not come to an end if you share that you had an affair on your wife to a bunch of guys who there's a good chance that one of them in that group might have slipped at one time in their life, or they hate their boss and yet can't get rid of the job, and we all raise our hands at one point in our career to that. There's just so much of life that we think we're the only ones that ever did it. We wouldn't want the world to know, where in reality, most of us are walking around examples of what we shouldn't be doing in life, but yet we all slip. And so understanding that there are other guys that have been troubled in their lives like we have is the door opener. It was for these two guys. I've seen it in my experiences in small group and even large group, 150 men over a weekend. And you can just see lives change by the sheer fact of having an environment where they go, wow, this guy just shared something where I would never do that. maybe I should try it, because I see this look about him that says, he looks okay. He looks like he's kind of repaired from whatever damage he had. I want to figure that out. And that's what happened to me, Kevin. That's exactly what happened to me. This Larry guy I mentioned earlier, when I first met him, he was telling me about a story about his past, very similar to my career. Fortune 50 company. He was traveling all over the world. He was the head of marketing. He was a very important guy, but he was coming home and was really not a father and a husband, and he was on the verge of divorce. And he broke away from it. I can go into a long story about that. Here's my point. When I first met him, he was telling me his story, and I was like, you know what? He was in my office. I'm thinking, you know what? Jesus doesn't belong in the office. I go to church. I'll pray to God and Jesus, but I don't think he belongs in my office right now because I'm too busy. That's the moment I met this guy. But yet he was patient with me. I didn't say those words, but I kind of like, come on, guy, I'm in the middle of something. And yet he stuck with me. It's like, and he told me his story, but Kevin, it was his facial expression, his look that I probably have seen on just a very few people. I've noticed, I've probably seen thousands of them, but I've never noticed it. It was a calm, content, peaceful look. And afterwards I thought, I want that. I want that. I don't know how to get it yet, but there's at some point in my life, I want to stop everything and figure out how to get that. And that's it. That was really the impetus of this journey that I wrote about. That's for sure.
It is important because a lot of guys will do exactly what you said when somebody else opens up. And the reality is, and we don't recognize this, but I had a supervisor tell me one time, there is nothing that you can do that somebody else hasn't done before you.
No doubt. No doubt.
And so when you look at it that way, it's like, wow, I'm not so awful after all. If somebody else has done this awful thing too, and stuff, and it's important. And most guys are not given the opportunity. I mean, we're supposed to be, as you were, the leader, and we're the impenetrable one that can make lots of money and is on top of the world and has got all these things going for us and stuff. But there still is that little boy inside of you and inside of me that still needs to be comforted, taken care of, and loved. Don't you think?
We want to be told that what we do, that someone is proud of us for doing what we're doing. We want to be told that we're loved. We're just guys. That's just we're very simple with that kind of stuff. We really are. It's not complicated for guys, and yet we do hold a lot in. And we're hunter gatherers. We think we're supposed to take care of people, and that we're to take care of ourselves. And in reality, most of us are some form of broken, and to have the opportunity to have people understand us, to where we don't have to hold back. That's really important. And I think the other thing too, and this is really important too, the finish line to peace, it's a long journey. It can be a long journey, but it ends with forgiveness. It ends with forgiving wrongdoers. And those wrongdoers can be, like, for me, it was my father. For John, my uncle, it was his father. But it could be ourselves as well. As I mentioned, I was married twice. The minute this book was finished, I wrote an amazing note. At least for me, it was amazing note to her, and sent her a copy of the book. And I said, you are part of the fabric of this story. And I asked her for forgiveness, and I continued to wish her well. My second wife was actually one of the editors of the book, and so it was. But it's important to recognize that when we wrong someone, if we really need to go reach out, part of the healing is to seek forgiveness. If you can't, and like in my father's case, my father already gone, so I didn't get a chance to ask for forgiveness from him for how I treated him in the later years. But I'd already but during this journey, I had forgiven him for what he had done to me. and that allowed me to forgive myself. And I think that's really the key. That is the finish line to peace. Is you can say, no wrongdoers. You're not gonna. You no longer have a hold on me. I forgive you. In some cases, maybe all cases, I love you, and I am better. I feel now that I'm better having experienced what I experienced with you, even though a lot of it was very painful. I've overcome that, and that's been the major positive that will wash the rest of it away, and that's what's happened to me.
And forgiveness is a huge aspect of healing, because
No
once
doubt.
you forgive, you can heal. And we're talking with Tom Harrison. We need to take our last 30-second break, and this one is important too, so pay attention to it. And he's written the book From Punishment to Peace, and then I've got a message that I want to deliver to everybody who's listening to this show right now when we come back. We'll be right back after this. You're listening to Positive Talk right here on the Brushwood Media Network.
A lifetime of savings can disappear overnight. Millions of dollars are stolen every day from unsuspecting older adults by family members, caregivers, and trusted professionals. If you suspect financial exploitation, call the Elder Care Locator at 1-800-677-1116 or go online to the National Adult Protective Services Association to be connected with help in your area.
And welcome back to Positive Talk with Kevin McDonald. Yes, I play that so that my children don't steal my money from me. Anyway, because I'm not as young as I once was, and you know how that goes. But Tom, I want to say this. I feel called to say this, and that is this. When I was going through my period of understanding who I really was and what I was all about, I had a friend that told me, go to a bookstore, and I want you to buy the first book that speaks to you. And I did that, and it quite literally was a book. It's called Journey of Souls, and it quite literally sent me on the path that I am now. And I wanted to tell this to people: if you if any of this conversation that we've been having, which, by the way, Tom, thank you. It's been a wonderful conversation.
Thank you, Kevin. Thank you.
If this resonates with you in any way, shape, or form, I want you to go to Amazon. I want you to go get this book and read it from cover to cover, because it has significant help for you in your healing journey as you go through life. And there's a reason why you're listening to this program right now, whether it's today's date, next week, next year, because it'll still be up. It'll still be there for you. Go get From Punishment to Peace by Tom Harrison. And it will do you good, and it will actually put you on the road to forgiving yourself so that you can lead the life that you were truly meant to lead. Have I overstated that, sir?
No, I don't think so. And I want to add to it. There's some humor in it. These characters, you're gonna laugh at them. You're gonna cry at what they're doing. You shake your head and go, "What was that all about?" So I tried to make it as entertaining as possible and rather deep subject. And I will say that thank you for all that. These as I said, these characters are originally very sweet people, and they didn't deserve what they went through, but they figured it. They figured out a way to attempt to figure it out, and what they went through was pretty special. So I'm just thrilled that I was able to share a little bit of this with you and your audience. So thank you, Kevin, very much.
I really appreciate you, Tom, and it's like I say also in the opening. I don't even know why I do a show. It's all in the opening. Is that we are all born great, and then through the course of time and experience and things that happen to us, we are continually told by the powers that be, or your mom or your dad or whoever, that you're not so great after all. Well, and then we spend a great time in our life trying to figure out the fact that, dang it, we are great, and we were born great, and we deserve to have the best life that we can and to really enjoy our time here. And sometimes it takes decades. In my case, it took 4. And in other cases, it takes longer, sometimes less. But it's important that we recognize that we're always great, and to get past some of the other people that have told us we ain't so great.
Go find your path to find that. I mean, I think that's really, go create that path, whatever that is, to work through and figure out how great we all are. And I agree with that 100%, Kevin. We can't let the world shape and unfortunately shape who we are. But unfortunately, many of us, we really didn't have much of a choice, especially in our youth. And it takes a while for us to give ourselves that permission to say, you know what, I refuse to see myself the way that I am seeing myself now. I don't like that. And so find people, find prayer, find whatever it is that gets you in on that path, and stay on it as long as you can, because that's really the key to getting, in my overusing the word peace, but really that's how I got there, and John got there too.
That's such an important aspect of our life, is to live our lives in peace and harmony, and to have fun. And it's not a hoity-toity highfalutin thing. It should be a basic construct or concept of life, is that we are happy. And if you're not happy, go seek happiness, as long as it's not the expense of somebody else. But you can live your life in a way that at the end of it, you can honestly say that you've contributed, you were kind, you were caring, you were loving, and you were taking care of other people.
Yes.
And if you can, at the end of your life, you can say that, you can die quietly, peacefully, and know that you've done what you needed to do.
And that your life meant something.
Exactly.
Getting back to the intro to your show, is that your life means something. And that's what, it's not the almighty dollar. It's not adding a penny to a share to as part of a publicly traded company and making themselves and others wealthy. It's improving the lives of the people that either you care about, or even a stranger, a homeless person like my uncle, who most people would just walk by. You don't know what that person went through. You don't know how kind of heart that person is. And that's the beauty of the story, is that homeless man, that uncle character, was teaching his nephew how to forgive. And that was an amazing journey for both of them. But there was a lot of love, a lot of teaching, a lot of wisdom from a lot of people out there that you would at least expect it coming from. No doubt about that.
You know, Tom, it's interesting. I drove a bus for 12 years in Seattle, and the reason that I was directed to do that is so that I would learn that lesson, that you don't have to be rich to have happiness. You can have really interesting things to say, and you can have empathy for a lot of people that are less than.
Yes.
And that is so important. Tom, we need to wrap up, but is there anything that you would like to leave us with on our way out the door here?
Wow. We've talked so much about this, Kevin, but I think we all just need to realize that a lot of us need to be better to ourselves than we are. And finding out what we're carrying and how heavy that load is an important first step to figuring out how to find that happiness, even though maybe buying a BMW. I just bought a BMW and it was really nice, but it's been in the shop more than it's been driving. But the BMW, when I bought it, made me happy, but I'm not necessarily at peace because I own the BMW. And I think that's really, you mentioned happiness. We've talked about peace. Strive for the peace, because happiness can be fleeting. And so that's probably the best last comment I can say is, don't get peace and happiness too confused, because I've been happy. I've had money make me happy all the time, but I haven't been at peace until I was able to find who I really was through my experiences that were written in this book. So
we've been talking with Tom Harrison. Go to his website, FromPunishmentToPeace.com. Find out all about him. Buy the book from him, and you can also buy a signed copy from him. So that is worth the price of admission. Tom, I'd like to thank you for being here.
Kevin, thank you so much. What a great experience. I really appreciate it.
Have a great day, young man, and stay right there. I'll be right back. Thanks for listening to this episode of Positive Talk with Kevin McDonald. Our purpose is to provide everyone with a positive, entertaining, and educational experience. I would love your feedback and comments about the show, including possible topics and great guest suggestions. Please email me at kevin@kmmedia.pro. And remember, be kind to one another because each other's all we've got. That's Kevin at kmmedia.pro.